So, welcome and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for this presentation. I am Celia Spiritos and the director of the 3L team in OCS. In a typical non-pandemic year, when OCI took place in the summer between 1L and 2L years, you would have transitioned to our 2L team after OCI and turned to us as your specialists. That would have been in the fall of your 2L year. It would have been if you needed to talk about searches for externships and or summer positions for 2L summer and or post-grad positions. This year, some of you have worked with your 1L advisor throughout OCI, while others have worked with one advisor until maternity leave and then transitioned to another for OCI. Shout out to sections 5 and 6. This year, the transition to our specialized 2L team comes a bit later due to COVID and the changed timing of OCI. We invite you to start meeting with our team who specialize in partnering with 2Ls in their searches. While you are welcome to continue to meet with your 1L OCI advisor, their schedules may be filling up with 1L advising appointments, while ours will be open to appointments for 2Ls. The team I will introduce now specializes in searches beyond OCI, including small and medium-sized firms, some large firms, and other opportunities that we will mention today. Before we start, though, I'd like to introduce the many dedicated 2L OCS advisors who are here with us today. Section 1. Oh, and you will see all of these advisors speaking later in the program. Section 1, you will be supported by Christine Washington and Grace Adaroja. Section 2, you'll be supported by me, Celia. Section 3, you'll be supported by Rachel Kohler. Section 4, you'll be supported by Robin Rucker and Shujun Tian, who will be joining us later. She's actually doing another program contemporaneously with this one, so she'll be coming in the breakout rooms in the end. Section 5, you have the luck of continuing to be supported by me, unless you'd prefer to go to somebody else, and that's fine too. Section 6, you'll be supported by Rachel Kohler, and many of you met her this past summer. And Section 7, you'll be supported by Marcia Shannon. Adrienne Clark also joins us today from OPICS, and she will talk about other opportunities in the public sector and how you can weave those into your narrative when you're looking for a private sector position post-grad. And we are also joined by Michelle Hoff, who specializes in judicial clerkships, and she will also tell you about paths to post-grad positions in the private sector, which also weave in judicial clerkships. We will present this program today, and we will follow up with 15 minutes at the end with breakout rooms for either your individual section advisor, and we'll put those names in breakout rooms so you don't have to remember who's who, into the chat. And we will, and our clerkship advisor will also have a breakout room, as well as Adrienne Clark from OPICS. And now I will turn it over to our Assistant Dean, Marcia Shannon.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you here. Thank you so much for coming. And I just want to start off with kind of giving you a context for this 2L job search, summer job search. It's comprised of a lot of different pieces. OCI is just one of them, pre-recruiting another, the public sector recruitment program, job listings and simplicity and other sites, networking, that wonderful word everybody loves, and targeting specific employers. For many, the hope and desire was to secure something through OCI. In a normal year, 54% of the 2L class does so. We don't know the numbers yet, but I can say this was anything but a normal year, and it continues to be so. Firms did extensive pre-recruiting. Many reduced class sizes while at the same time saying they weren't. And yet we're still hearing about offers of callbacks. I heard about another one today. So it's it's probably one of the strangest years we've ever seen. There is no doubt behind it. And add in the whole virtual component, it's just crazy. So the wisest thing you can do is to continue your job search, even if you're still waiting to hear from firms. And your attendance at this program certainly shows your wisdom. What we've learned about job searching in a pandemic is that it takes resilience, creativity, and support. We're here today to provide the creativity and the support, and you're here with your resilience. So let's get started.
Great. Thank you, Marcia. So our goals today are to answer your questions at the end, to tell you about some ways that you can find a position for 2L summer, to inspire confidence that you can still find a position for 2L summer. And there are many of you here today and also not here today who are still seeking. So you're not alone in your situation. And we wanted to let you know that. This is a path. And as Marcia mentioned this year's quirky for so many reasons. And today we're going to talk about next steps. We're going to talk about what you can do to move forward beyond OCI and to continue your job search. We're going to give you some examples of students who got into a large firm after OCI and tell you exactly how they did it. And this can lead to that creativity that Marcia just alluded to. We will also discuss students who took a different path to a lucrative, fulfilling career and why that matters now. So we'll talk about when to implement the next steps and what does that even look like. Next. So the time to do that is now, and you started by coming here today. There's no reason to wait, especially if many of the opportunities you may seek are compatible with many end goals. For example, securing a relevant externship for fall, in addition to your summer placement, can prepare you for a post-grad position. There's important research and networking, that word again, that Marcia mentioned, you can start doing today in order to be in the right place at the right time when an opening comes along. And now, as Marcia mentioned, there could be some opportunities that will still pop up. And you're not completely abdicating those firms, you're reiterating your interest, and your advisor can talk to you about how to best do that, but also to take these steps and move forward. So what do those steps look like? After OCI, some students get worried and apply to almost anything that's available. We don't think that's a successful strategy in the long run for a few reasons. One, it takes a lot of resources to send out mass mailings. You've got to tailor them, and you might not hear from most of them. But also, because the second reason is because by graduation, you want your resume to reflect a strong narrative about what you want to do in your career and show the skills that you have built and from now on that you want to build going forward. So your long-term strategy should be a collection of work experiences that, when viewed together, tell a coherent story about what you want to do post-grad and all of these skills that you've developed. Then those are the internships, the summer positions, and the externship positions that you want to focus your time on applying to that will help bolster that narrative. How do you figure out what those work experiences look like? One way is looking at a job description of a job that you might want 1 to 3 years post-graduation. Where do you want to be? Read that experience and skills, the experiences and skills that job description looks for in candidates. If you look at enough job postings, or even a few, you're going to start to see common themes, and then you can think about how you can gain those skills. So you can bring that job posting to an advisor. An advisor will also help you look at other things that you can do to take that step for the next experience that you need to build your narrative. Next.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to talk about is just a brief synopsis of the different sectors that you can be looking at for your summer position. And these are the ones that we'll be discussing today, if that's not obvious. So first, we're going to be looking at firms, small and mid-sized firms, including regional and boutique firms. Alternative private sector employment types, such as working in-house. Public sector employment, like government and nonprofits. And judicial internships for the summer, and how clerkships fit in the long run. And just keep in mind that all of these paths can lead back to large firms or elsewhere if you choose, which we'll discuss more. Next slide, please. But before we go into more detail about the specific sectors, we want to outline what your goal can look like. At this point in your law school career, it's time to go from a potentially more generic resume to one that's specifically tailored for the practice area or subject matter of your choosing. So if you haven't already, that means you can consider choosing a practice area to focus on and build your resume around that. That shift will help you get a job in the private sector and potentially get you back to large firms if you'd like for after graduation or even a few years down the line. Reason for this shift is because of how firm hiring changes between 2L and 3L. When firms are looking at 2L candidates for their more generic summer associate programs, a more generic resume can be successful. But by the time they're hiring 3Ls, they tend to be hiring into practice groups specifically, not into a summer associate program. So all of a sudden they're looking for a big change, not just that you have strong grades and come from a strong school like Georgetown, but also that you have a specific demonstrated interest in a particular practice area and can speak enthusiastically and eloquently about it. For example, there's going to be a posting coming up either today or tomorrow where Morgan Lewis is posting a new position in their transactional tax group specifically for 2Ls. Now, while Morgan Lewis tends to be a bit of an exception to the rule, and that they always frequently hire their 2L associates, summer associates into practice groups specifically, that's the move that most of these firms make when they're looking at 3L hiring. So as we go through the different sectors, we're going to give you examples of how this type of narrative shift has played out for other alumni and students in your shoes. It's really about diving into your passion. So next slide.
Hello, am I on camera now? Hello?
You're good.
Oh, okay, great. I can't see it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about regional and boutique firms. Okay, so during OCI, a lot of the regional firms and the boutique firms didn't participate in OCI, and that really makes sense. If you look at how those firms are structured, they typically don't have like a large staff where they can devote resources to just hiring people, okay? And so this is a perfect time to reach out to those firms, and really those firms operate in having students reach out to them as opposed to the other way around. So this is going to be the perfect time to express your interest, the perfect time to reach out to these smaller firms because they're not necessarily operating on the same time frame as the larger firms. And so beginning to make connections now is going to be the ideal time. And so you're going to want to look at various geographic regions because they may not have actually done their OCI yet. So that might even be a greater opportunity for outreach. But if they are, and if they don't participate in OCI, they haven't yet done their outreach or started to put together their classes. So this is a good time to look at regional and boutique firms. And you're not late at all. And the way you're going to want to start about this process is really to visit with your advisors. We can really talk to you about a customized bespoke strategy that's going to have you reach out to these firms in a way that's compelling and that takes the pressure off, and so that you're not reaching out like somebody who is, I don't know, this is really going to be about relationship building. I know everybody keeps saying networking, but relationship building is going to be the way to do it. We can really strategize with you about building that relationship so that you stand out. And really these firms, again, small boutique firms, expect you to come to them. And so they're not necessarily going to post the positions. And so this is where the relationship building comes into play. I've seen time and time again where students start to do this outreach with our support and guidance. And as they're doing the outreach, they find out about positions at firms that are a really great fit for them. And they do that through the networking and the strategic process. And so here in this when you're reaching out to regional and boutique and smaller firms, leveraging your connections is really going to be vital because they're less likely to just pick resumes out of the pile. They're going to get hundreds of people who are reaching out. You know, it's not just Georgetown, it's going to be the people in the region, it's going to be other top schools. And so you having relationships and leveraging your connections is the way that you're going to stand out from the rest of the pack. to receive an offer. And then, yeah, so we'll have resources available. I think Rachel now is going to talk about a specific example of somebody. Oh, I guess this is a resource, maybe. Okay, you guys can read this. Okay. And I think now Rachel is going to talk about a specific example of somebody who was successful doing things by reaching out to a boutique firm. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Grace. So now I'm going to just outline an example that, of how a student navigated to a great outcome through a boutique firm strategy. So this particular student, he did not get an offer out of his 2L OCI, and he pretty readily admits that it's because he didn't really know what he wanted out of a large firm job. But by the spring of his 2L, he became really interested in his tax-related coursework. And became close with a professor who was encouraging him through into this subject matter. So, while the summer between his 2L and 3L ended up doing kind of an internship that was heavy in research and writing and gave him a little bit more exposure to a tax case. Ultimately, what he did is he just strengthened his relationship with his tax professors and networked with firms using those relationships. He got strong grades in his tax classes, and he actually ended up enrolling in the LLM program for our tax LLM. And through that mechanism, he got a position at a boutique tax firm that he worked at between 3L and what ended up being his 4L or LLM semester. And in fact, during that entire time, he was working part-time for that firm. And what was the outcome here? The end result was that this alum, he worked at the tax boutique firm for a couple of years and ended up moving to a top large firm within 2 years of graduation. And what I think is important here is to highlight is both that strong passion for a subject matter and diving into that passion, naturally led to great opportunities because that passion was really there and that interest was really there, as well as the fact that, because this student enrolled in the LLM, he did have the opportunity to participate in OCI a second time as a 2L again, because his graduation date had moved. Although in this particular case, he had just continued on with the boutique firm that he connected with outside of the program.
That's great. Thank you so much, everybody. Hi, I'm Christine Washington, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I wanted to take this opportunity to mention a couple of alternate routes to private sector jobs beyond big law, so to speak. Jose Luis, there are a few markets to explore that we think are really critical for Georgetown law students to consider as you look at, additional ways to sort of climb the mountain, so to speak, right? Markets that you might think about are banking. In here, we're talking about investment banking or compliance roles, consulting. Here, we're talking about big three, healthcare, national security, advisory, local or regional companies. Accounting firms also have compliance, tax law, or consulting arm opportunities for which lawyers can be incredibly well suited. And in-house legal departments, that's a key one. Now, all of these sectors have summer positions available, or you can look at alternative private sector employers as you think about postgraduate opportunities as well. Let me also take this opportunity to mention associations as a ripe alternative legal market as well, because associations can provide incredibly interesting law, policy, and advocacy work. And these avenues can be especially interesting for Georgetown law students because, as you all already know, DC is the land of associations. And I believe that there's really literally an association for almost every area in Washington. Just a few that come to mind are the National Association of Realtors, the American Bar Association, the American Corporate Compliance Association, the American Corporate Counsel Association, American Bankers Association, National Association of Manufacturers, and so on and so forth. Now, someone I know well who comes to mind built a really rewarding career at a leading business trade association representing the manufacturing sector on international trade, investment, IP and regulatory policies, legislation, and agreements. Now, notably, positions with in-house legal departments are the most likely to still be open at this stage in the recruiting cycle. But we want to mention all of these alternative private sector segments, if you will, because you should still consider them if you're interested in them. You never know what amazing opportunities might exist. You may be able to build further relationships in any of these sectors, which will continue to allow you to build that narrative and demonstrate that passion, as we've discussed. And these can be also fabulous opportunities for postgraduate employment as well. Now, besides Simplicity and Georgetown resources, we also want to make sure that you remember that some of your undergraduate career teams may have additional resources and access to some of these opportunities in the alternative private sector space as well. Working with them as well as us, or just seeing what's out there that they might have, can allow you really essentially to take a second bite at the apple, so to speak, and just maximize your world of opportunities. Jose Luis? Well, there's another animation. There you go. Thank you. I just wanted to be able to have this here to remind everybody we want you to think beyond law firms. That's the upshot for private sector career building. Now, that said, let me now highlight a great opportunity for students that's available in the in-house space on Simplicity. There's an open 2021. Jose Luis, if you bring that up, I would love to be able to show everybody, please. There we go. Wayfair has got a really meaty experience where you can do, and you can read through all of this, but you can do, I think, amazing things in the corporate in-house space. So I would love to make sure that I commend that to your attention. And at this time also, I wanted to share with you all a few paths of students who've essentially successfully navigated, the in-house route to big law. One example is a Georgetown Law 2L who participated in OCI. They had about a 3.2 or so going in. OCI was not the route to that student's summer employment that year. He ended up working for an investment fund during the academic year through the summer, beginning about February. And he also did an incredible job with networking. He networked with a New York partner at a top 10 firm, who then introduced him in turn to a San Francisco partner in their fund formation practice. And this student ended up with a great job at that firm upon graduation. So, Jose Luis, would you kindly advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. And here's one more example that I wanted to make sure that I share with you all of a student who really leveraged the in-house strategy to big law. OCI here, for this particular Georgetown student, who was a transfer student, was not the route to their summer 2L experience. This student interned with the SEC during 2L second semester. They worked in-house their 2L summer, focusing on SEC, labor and employment, and other corporate issues. Their third year, they worked with the Social Enterprise Clinic, and they ended up with a big law job, Jose Luis, in a prominent firm's corporate and securities practice. So again, there are many paths up the mountain. Every path is different. You just have to keep climbing. Thank you. That's it for my slides.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adrienne Clark, and I'm a career counselor in OPICS, the Office of Public Interest and Community Service. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about public sector positions that might be an option for you this summer. Many students are dual planning between the private and public sectors. So I encourage you to continue or start incorporating the public sector resources in your search, taking into account the substantive knowledge, skills, and experiences that you hope to gain. I think we have a list on this slide. There it is. So Simplicity, the Arizona Guide, also called the Arizona Handbook, PSJD, and individual government and organizational websites are some of the best places to search for public sector opportunities. And there are still public interest opportunities out there. Recently posted and recently updated opportunities include, I think there's one that'll be on this slide, the U.S. General Service Administration Office of Inspector General. But I also want to mention the Department of Health and Human Services, DOJ Antitrust and DOJ Civil, a couple of opportunities in the FTC, the USDA, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but as you're thinking about sort of what kinds of work do you hope to do and what kinds of skills do you want to gain, consider applying to some government positions in the process. I should note that if you're all interested in government, especially the federal government, there are many deadlines coming up this month and early next month with some of these government agencies. So for example, the Securities and Exchange Commission reviews applications on a rolling basis, even though they have a final deadline in February. So it's important to consider whether you want to apply and apply now. In your search, also consider state attorney general offices and other state and local government agencies. Some examples of AG's offices with open postings include New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Virginia, and Washington State. You can also look at opportunities on Capitol Hill, particularly relevant committee work. The Hill listserv highlights summer opportunities, and you can sign up to receive updates. There are also nonprofit organizations that are still hiring. For example, the ACLU of Maryland posted in Simplicity just last week. So if you think about litigation skills you want to gain, doing large scale complex litigation, looking at nonprofits that might be doing some of that work will be useful to you as well. Please also remember that not all public interest employers post their opportunities. So continuing to connect with people and doing direct outreach to organizations of interest is important. There are many students who reach out to a place that they're interested in, there's no posting, but they make their case and an organization takes them on. So please reach out to your OPICS counselor to strategize around applying for opportunities like these. And I think next, Robin is going to give an example of somebody who incorporated the public sector in their search in reaching their eventual goals.
Before Robin kicks off, I just want to chime in about the GSA OIG job and others like it. OCS, we really want to support students who are interested in using some public sector employment opportunities to grow their skills. We can't understate how highly relevant and very persuasive and compelling some of these positions in government or nonprofits can be for private sector employers. For some of these positions, like this GSA position, you really can often hone down on not just the exact same skills, but the same subject matter that you'd be doing in-house in a corporation or at a large firm. And so with that kind of strength of overlap, we just really encourage you to reach out to our OPICS counterparts and explore these opportunities for summer. Now I'll let you go, Robin.
Thank you, Rachel and Adrian. Next slide. So this is an example of a student who used the government strategy to get into Big Law. So as you see, this person was not successful. They were not successful in OCI. So their 2L so they interned at the DOJ in the spring of their 2L year in the National Court section. Then their summer position after that was working for the Federal Aviation Administration in their enforcement division. As a third year, this individual took an opportunity to work for the Harrison Institute for Public Law on their trades team. And also during 3L year, and Celia mentioned this, took some classes that were relevant in certain areas consistent with trade, and ultimately landed in a position in Big Law working for a trade practice at that point in time. So this is an example of how that government strategy gave that person the skill set, the connections. They bolstered the narrative with the coursework as we were talking about, and ultimately were able to get that Big Law job, although it was not through the traditional OCI channel. Next slide.
And so with that, I want to talk just a little bit about judicial internship opportunities as well as clerkships. While typically judicial internships are something that people often think about in their 1L summer or maybe as an externship during their 2L or 3L year, judicial internships can also be really good opportunities for you to gain substantive area practical skills during your 2L summer. I'll share just a few examples, and there are others that aren't on the slide. First, and perhaps most obviously, the US tax court judges hire interns, and you'll get some great tax exposure. The bankruptcy courts can also be another great thing to consider. And there, you don't just get a siloed bankruptcy experience. They can be really relevant skills building opportunities for people interested in restructuring or corporate finance. The International Trade Court is something that can be a great opportunity for those of you who are interested in international law. They focus on import-export matters. They handle a lot of complex litigation issues. And the bonus for many of you is that they're located in New York City. So it could be a great way to get yourself into that market if that's where you're hoping to be. I will note that there is currently a posting on Simplicity for Judge Katzman, who sits at the International Court of Trade. I believe his deadline is next Monday. but could be a great thing to think about if any of those areas are of interest to you. The last one that I'll point out, and I think it often gets overlooked, is the Federal Court of Claims. It has a broader jurisdiction than some of these other places, which are kind of more narrow. It handles a lot of government contract matters. It handles a lot of employment law issues. They'll deal with some tax refund matters. They also deal with a heavy amount of copyright, patent issues. And for those of you who are interested in health, they have an entire docket that handles vaccine related issues. So in the coming months and years, that could be an increasing docket that could offer some really great opportunities to people who are interested. And I will say, in addition to thinking about judicial internship opportunities for this summer, it's not too early to start thinking about clerkships. And you heard Rachel a few minutes ago talk about how someone used an LLM program really kind of to get themselves an extra summer. And for many of you, a clerkship could do that exact same thing. Thinking about clerkships, you need to start now. But if you are successful in securing a postgraduate clerkship, it really sits, or for many of you, could sit as that extra year afterwards and creates kind of a second summer that in between your graduation and your clerkship starting that you could use to gain some additional skills or be marketable to bigger law employers. I've had a number of students over the years who, once they secured their clerkships, kind of got back into the mix, approached some big law firms, and ended up doing summer associate positions during that kind of 3L plus summer, and ultimately took an offer at the end of that summer to return after their clerkship. So it's great to think about judicial internships as well as clerkships. For clerkships, I really do want to emphasize that even if you're independently interested in clerkships, now is the time to start thinking about them. Many of the clerkships that people will find most interesting will have deadlines coming up in late spring or early summer. And so it's really important to start thinking about where you might go and how that might fit. I would encourage you to come and talk to me or any of our other clerkship advisors to figure out how it might fit into your plan. But clerkships have often been a way to not only gain some additional research and writing skills and make yourself more attractive to both private sector and public sector employers, but they can be great independent learning experiences in and of themselves. So with that, I will turn it back over to Robin.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So next slide, please. So after hearing all this information, I'm sure many of you are thinking, well, how do I locate these positions? So here you'll see a list of resources where you can go to basically see what the options are, what the lay of the land is, so to speak. So you have the spring interview program. Simplicity is obviously one you all are very, very familiar with. General job searching websites like Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and then the Georgetown OCS Diversity Opportunities Chart. And you also see examples of the types of things you'll find here. I think one of the things that you want to do in terms of your job search is really think about not putting all of your eggs in one basket and looking to one resource, because while Simplicity may be a great resource for a lot of these positions, there are lots of things out there. So you have to broaden your perspective in terms of search and look in different ways so that you're able to capture these opportunities from different resources. Next slide. So one of the things that I also think is really important for you all to think about in the big scheme of things is, what do you need to be doing to put yourself in the position to get these positions? And obviously attending events. Now, right now, we are in Zoomlandia thanks to the pandemic. So what we're experiencing is a lot of events by Zoom. So that networking that everybody kind of, keeps alluding to, and some people look at as a negative thing, happens via Zoom. So you want to be finding, are these organizations and law firms, corporations having events that you can participate in a Zoom way? And if so, sign up, make sure that you have your presence there. That's a wonderful opportunity to meet people. And as a footnote with that, the networking piece or asking people to spend time and talking with you is a lot easier now in our pandemic world. That we've slowed down. And so people tend to have a little more time built in. So that 20-minute chat that somebody might not have had in our prior reality, they definitely have now. So think about attending those events. Again, networking, and I love Grace mentioned it the way I always like to allude to it, and it's relationship building. You are not really going out there finding people and using people as a means to an end, but you're building organic relationships. And when you do it in that way, people are more willing to help you because the connection is genuine and real. So you want to be making sure that you're doing that, sitting down with your counselors and letting us talk with you about how to do that outreach. I know sometimes it can be a bit intimidating, especially if you don't have a connection. We can help you think of language and ways to be creative in your outreach. Bar associations are a very underutilized resource. As a law student myself, that was one of the ways that I built some of my most meaningful connections. Being a law student in the sea of attorneys, you kind of stand out and people want to talk to you. They want to see what your interest is in being there. So use the bar association, state, local affinity bars as a resource for making these connections and getting closer to those positions. And again, connecting with OPICs and OCS. We really don't just say we're here to help you because it's our job. Obviously it is, but we want to be that resource, that opportunity for you to have a thought partner, someone who can assist you as you're looking to find that next thing that you're going towards. Next slide.
Thanks, Robin. So, just to kind of wrap things up, we want to acknowledge that this can be a difficult time for some students. It's a time of transition for some people, it's a time of disappointment. And we want to support you. We want our resources. We want our work and labor to support you as you go through this, as you bounce forward while you're bouncing back. And so I'm just going to highlight a couple resources real quick that we already have that you'll be able to connect with as soon as we end this event or whenever it works for you. First, we have the Firm Hiring Beyond OCI YouTube video. This is a video that we recorded last year of a panel of 3Ls and recent alum who got large firm jobs post-OCI. And it's a video of just this panel talking about how they forged that path. We obviously have in the second box our resources to help you connect with small, medium firms, including our small, medium firm list. We have our Accelerate Your Networking in Minutes YouTube video, a couple YouTube videos about that synopsize, different resources for applying to private companies and applying to small and regional law firms. And we have an Overcoming Obstacles series where in the PDF that you'll receive after our event is over, there are links to 2 different videos about networking with no fear and perseverance, where one of our staff members at OCS, Grace, interviewed alumni who talked very intimately about what their experience was like finding their path post-OCI. Next slide, please. And the last resource that I really wanted to highlight was that we'll be handing out a link to is we've assembled a not at all by no means comprehensive, but very thorough list of in-house corporate internships that are available in the DC area and in other regions of the country. The link to this is going to go out in the PDF that we'll be sending after the presentation. And we really encourage you to look at this and apply to these positions if they fit your passion that we talked about today. And one other thing that I just want to highlight is attached to this is our Beyond Big Law listserv. This will be going out with that listserv, and if you're not already signed up, we encourage you to do so because these are the kinds of opportunities that we publicize on that listserv. Now we're going to be able to move to breakout rooms with your advisors. And just to reiterate, we really encourage you to connect with your advisor. If not today in the breakout room, then in on appointments coming up soon, because, there's just a lot of you who are in the same situation, particularly in this strange year. So we really encourage you to reach out for support and guidance as you go through this. So I'm going to stop the recording and open up the breakout rooms. If you have any questions, feel free to ask your advisor. Thank you all for your time.